Hey, how's it going? Brian Bowman here. And if you don't know who I am, I'm the founder of eCom Underground, eCom Legacy, and we help e-commerce sellers sell more stuff, help you make more money online. And today I want to walk through a presentation I did at a private mastermind event earlier this year. There were between 700 and 1,000 people at this event. They had paid, kind of depending on what tier they were in the mastermind, anywhere between $30,000 to $150,000 for the year to be able to attend events like this. And I talked about something that has become really important. I've talked about in the past that, marketing, there are fundamentals, there are principles that don't change. However, recently, we've definitely seen some changes in tactically and strategically how you should run your ads. And in particular, what mistakes to avoid. And that's what the presentation was about. So I want to walk you through the 7 paid ads mistakes that you absolutely must avoid in 2022. I'm pretty sure this is going to be helpful for you, especially if you are buying media, particularly if you're buying Facebook, Instagram ads, and if you're branching out into even any of the other platforms that have gotten traction lately. So I'm going to switch screens here. We're going to dive into it. I'll go through the presentation again. I hope this helps you a lot and you're able to apply some of this stuff and not just tactically know what to apply, but understand how to interpret your data, interpret what's happening so you can make better decisions with your media buying and your advertising. So let me go ahead, switch screens, and we'll get started here. All right, here we go. 7 paid ads blunders you must avoid in 2022. Now, if you are listening to this, we'll link out to the video so that way you can watch it as well. Sometimes it helps to see the visuals to understand everything, but I'll do my best to explain everything if you're just listening. So 7 paid ads blunders you must avoid in 2022. Number 1, a focus on tactics versus a focus on first principles. And this really is the main point and really the most important blunder to avoid. But before we get to that, we're going to cover some of the other ones, and then we'll circle back to this one at the end. Number 2, flea market Facebook ads. Now, what I'm talking about relates to all paid ads you're going to run. But this particular point, flea market Facebook ads, is going to be obviously about Facebook ads, and it's because it's the most common mistake that we see, or one of the most common mistakes we see when we work with brands, with our clients, with our students. When they come to us, this is kind of the most common thing, and you might have been able to get away with it before, but you absolutely cannot get away with it in 2022 and really going forward because of the cost of advertising. Number 3, profit margin. Yeah, it's about. Number 4, accepting an average order value. Number 5, compromising on conversion rate. Number 6, not optimizing your opt-ins. And number 7, treating tracking like an option. So let's dive in. And when we do, there's going to be a theme throughout all of this. And I want you to repeat it. I want you to put it on the wall. If you need to tattoo it, on the back of your hand so you can see it every day. Great marketing doesn't beat bad math. All right. I want you to say it out loud. I want you to remember this. Say it proud. Great marketing doesn't beat bad math. If the economics are not right, you can be the greatest marketer in the world. The math will be your destruction. So you have to make sure that you have good math, good economics, and that's going to be a kind of a central theme that you're going to hear me talking about over and over again throughout the presentation. So let's start with flea market Facebook ads. Like I said, this is point number 2 because we're going to go back to point number 1 at the end. Flea market Facebook ads. The main thing to remember about the ad auction, and that's in particular with Facebook ads, right? Like that it is an auction. So it's not like a competition. It is a competition. And the ad auction is a competition for attention and desire. And the main thing you have to remember is it's not just a competition between you and brands that sell what you sell that are advertising on Facebook. It's a competition for the attention and the desire of all the Facebook users across all products that are being advertised, right? Because your product and your brand and your competitors are not the only ones popping up in my newsfeed when I'm scrolling through Facebook or scrolling through Instagram, right? So you're competing for those eyeballs, for that attention. And the reason this is so important is you have to remember that you have to go into it thinking if you only had one shot to get this customer to click your ad, to give you that limited attention that they have, right? Because attention spans get shorter and shorter, and there's more and more brands vying for that attention and advertising and trying to get them to click that ad. If you only had one shot, what would you do? Would you put your best product, your best offer, the most compelling thing you can come up with? Or would you, put something that's kind of your second bestseller, third bestseller, or some inventory that you're trying to move? And I think the answer is obvious, right? You put your absolute best stuff. So our theme internally is best or bust. We're going to put our best stuff or bust. Like there's nothing else that'll work. So we're not putting, your product you're trying to move or kind of, some product that didn't really sell well and maybe it's your third bestseller. None of that. It has to be your absolute best-selling product, best-selling offer, most compelling message. Just think top of your game, okay? Because you need to beat out all of your competition selling anything, trying to get that attention and desire that's out there in among users that you're advertising to. So there's 4 exceptions though, where we can kind of break the rules on this. Number 1 is retargeting. So if somebody's already bought from you and you're going to retarget them with another offer, well, then that's something you can do. And or cross-selling to buyers, or retargeting people who visited to your site. Now, there's 4 exceptions to this rule. So number 1 is retargeting. If people have visited your add to cart page, visited the product page, right? They've shown interest. We're going to retarget them with offers. Now, it could be that main offer, or it might be something else that they visited, right? They maybe visited one of your third best-selling products, but they did visit that. They did show interest, so we can retarget on those products. Cross-selling to buyers. If somebody's already bought and now you're going to cross-sell, they bought your number 1 thing and number 2 is complementary to that, or it makes sense that they would want to buy this other product, we can advertise that. Out of stock on the best. So this happens a lot, especially when brands, particularly when they come to us and we start ramping up advertising, they sell out of product and they have, product that's still coming in. There's this period where we can't advertise the best stuff. Happens all the time. So then we have to go to the second or third bestseller. And then bond building. We have some really cool strategies. I won't have time to go into this right now, but we have really, really cool strategies on the advertising side, not just on email, SMS, and everything else. On the, once we've got them on our list, but on the advertising side, we have some really cool tactics and strategies to build up that bond. And we absolutely put some money behind that. Not a lot, but we do put some behind it to get their interest going so they'll buy again in the future. So those are the 4 exceptions, but just remember, this is not a flea market to sell product, to see what we can get off the shelves. Facebook ads are a competition. Really, any platform you're going to advertise on is a competition for attention and desire, and you have to put your absolute best stuff in front of people, okay? All right, number 3, or number 2 in our order, but ultimately number 3 in the big list is profit margin. Yeah, it's about. And the reason I say that is, remember, great marketing doesn't beat bad math. You have to know your numbers. Think about Shark Tank. If you ever watch Shark Tank, people will go on and they'll do their whole marketing thing. Actually, I like this analogy a lot, or this comparison, because that's what they'll do. Great marketing, right? They got the pitch and they're like, and you should make a deal with us or whatever. Let's take a bite out of this market together. And it's like a cookie company or something. So they'll do that. And everyone's like, ha, ha, ha. They laugh. They pass around the cookie samples. And they're like, all right. And then they take out their pen and paper. And they're like, all right, tell me the numbers. What's your acquisition cost? What's your profit margin? Where are you advertising? What's it costing on these platforms to get a customer? What's your lifetime value? They want to know those numbers because they realize like the marketing can be great, but if the math sucks, the business isn't going to work. And it's certainly not going to work for them as an investor, because if there's not enough margin, if the economics don't make sense for them to invest and get, basically multiply their money, they're out. So the numbers are what it's all about. And this isn't really complex math, by the way. This is basic arithmetic. One of my favorite quotes ever is by Gary Halbert. He said, we are all in the same business. Doesn't matter what you're selling. Selling cookies, cars, carpenter tools, whatever you're selling, we're all in the arithmetic business. So you have to know your numbers. So with profit margin, you want to understand the difference between average order value and average order profit. It sounds like semantics, but it is a huge difference. Average order value, and I'm going to show some examples later on of this and how it affects everything, when all the pieces come together, how it makes such a big difference. But your average order profit is, average order value is how much did they spend, gross, top line, right? They bought, $30 of product. Your average order value was $30. Your average order profit on a 50% margin is $15. That's your average order profit. That's important because that tells you how much you can actually spend to acquire the customer. Because just because you made $30 on the order, right, it doesn't matter if your margin is $5. So great, I have a high, let's say you have a $100 average order value. Wow, I have a high AOV. Okay, but if your average order profit is $10, you only have $10 of profit to spend to acquire the customer because you spent the other 90 buying, fulfilling, packaging, shipping, the product. So average order profit is super important, and you want to maximize both of these numbers, average order value and average order profit. And then you have to understand the difference between your acquisition margin and your ordinary margin. What does this mean? Your ordinary margin is that 50% or that 70%. Actually, most brands we see when they come to us, they're somewhere between 70 and 80% profit margin on ordinary margins. So they have really healthy margins. However, when you're running ads, you're putting the best you can together, right? There's going to be usually a discount, bundling, buy one, get these two. So that you're not, you're discounting plus you're bundling things. So your margin is going to be lower on that offer. And you have to understand that acquisition margin versus your ordinary margin. It's not uncommon that your ordinary margin will be 75%, but your acquisition margin, once you factor in the bundles, the coupons, the discounts, all that stuff, your acquisition margin could be 50%. Well, that's going to make a huge difference because, again, let's say we have a $100 average order value, normally we have a 70% ordinary margin, which means $70 of cash, let's say, that we can spend to acquire, versus an acquisition margin of $50. Well, that $20 is going to make a huge difference at scale. Because if you start scaling up your advertising and you're like, oh, I've got a 70% margin, and you use that to determine your what ROAS you need, which we'll talk about in a second, it can quickly run away from you. So knowing the difference between these two is very, very important. The beauty is once you acquire the customer, then on the back end, when they start repeat buying, then your ordinary margin comes into play. And then all of this boils down to the only number that matters. To my knowledge, we are the only, our company, we're the only people I've ever heard talk about this BROAS number, or as we like to call the BROAS. So your break-even ROAS. Now, you probably have heard of the term ROAS, return on ad spend, which is great. But people ask all the time, is this a good ROAS? Is this good ROAS? Is 2 a good ROAS? Is 1.3 a good ROAS? Is 4 a good ROAS? Well, I don't know because I don't know your profit margin. So you have to know what is your break-even ROAS. What ROAS is the point where if you were acquiring customers at that return on ad spend, you're breaking even. In other words, the profit that you're making and that average order profit offsets the acquisition cost. That's super important. You have to know that number, and then you'll know, because if your break-even ROAS is 1.5, then if your return on ad spend, if your ROAS is 2, and you need to be at 1.5, but you're at 2, a higher ROAS is better. So if your break even is 1.5 and you're at a 2 ROAS in your campaign, you're kicking butt. You're doing awesome, right? But if your break even is 2.4 and you're at a 2 ROAS, that 2 ROAS is actually losing you money. And generally, we don't want to do that. Now, if you have a high lifetime value or high repeat purchases, then maybe you can borrow from the future a little bit to acquire the customer today. But for the most part, with all of our clients and all the students we work with, we want to break even at worst on the first sale so that everything after that's pure profit. In a lot of cases, we can profit on the front end. But that is a very, very important number for you to figure out because that's going to decide whether your return on ad spend is good or not when you're analyzing your numbers. All right. Accepting an average order value. If you've ever heard of David Goggins, he wrote a book called Can't Hurt Me, I think was the name of the book. He has this phrase called be uncommon among the uncommon. And what I want to do here is challenge you to be uncommon among the uncommon with entrepreneurs and business owners and e-commerce sellers. Don't just accept average in any part of your business. I mean, this goes way beyond e-commerce, right? This is a life lesson, but don't accept average. You maybe have a good average order value. Well, are you optimizing? Are you doing everything you can to make that average order value higher and higher and higher? And every incremental gain you can get matters. So understand your average order value. which items are that each item has a contribution to the average order value. And I'll break this down in a second. But understand what the contribution of each item is and optimize for each one of those items. It's not just the price that people are paying, it's the conversion rate on that thing. It's a two-part equation that multiplies out to the contribution that line item has to the average order value. Always give multiple quantity options. It's one of the easiest ways that we can take an average order value and make it an exceptional average order value, is by adding multiple quantities. Order bumps. This is pre-purchase upsells. So you have upsells after the purchase, upsells before the purchase, and you can do this in your funnels and Shopify, whatever platform you're on. You can upsell before people buy, and you can upsell after people buy. Upsells, downsells, that's after purchase, and then thank you page offers. Offer something on the thank you wall. There's always a way to increase the amount of money people spend, and you're trying to maximize that. So be uncommon among the uncommon. Find every single incremental opportunity. Some of these are pretty big opportunities, just the multiple quantity alone and bundling. We have one client that we're working with, and in our eCom Legacy program. So eCom Legacy is purely performance-based. It's literally you only pay if you get results. And when they came to us, their biggest month ever, I think, in a few years of business was $10,000 or $11,000 in 1 month, and that was like during Q4, like the biggest time of the year. After 4 months, we just crossed the $130,000 mark in 1 month. So we've more than 10x the business in 4 months. And how did we do it? It was a combination of applying these principles with our media buying and focusing on things like average order value and just every little incremental gain we can get. And every once in a while, you find something that's not just incremental, it's a huge bump. So one of the things we found was when we analyzed, this is a part of our process when we onboard clients into the eCom Legacy program, is we analyze all their data and we find patterns of what people are buying. And we found that 25% of people who bought this product also bought these other two. And we basically created a bundle where we gave them the option to buy them all right up front on that product page. And 36% of people are taking the bundle. So these are people that normally would have just bought one or had to, on their own, go and try to find the other products. They were able to have that option in front of them. Boom, 36% of them are taking all three, which had a huge increase in average order value, which did what? Because our average order value went up, our average order profit went up as well. We had more money to offset the acquisition costs, which meant we could really scale up hard on media buying. So all this stuff all ties together, and I'm gonna show you at the end, how to understand this and how to apply it in your business and know where the fix needs to be made, because a lot of times people fix the wrong thing. So here's an example. So average order value. So I'll explain this really quick. It's basically your main offer is the thing you're selling. So it's a $35 thing, and it looks here, what is this? This is 50% profit margin. So 50% profit margin on this. So $17.50 profit. So that way, if someone buys, everyone is buying this. This is the main thing. So it's an AOV contribution is $35. Average order profit contribution is $17.50, right? Because that's 100%. And then they pre-purchase upsell. 20% of people take it. It's a $9 thing with a $4 profit. So what is that? It's 45% profit margin or something, 40%. So if you take 20% times 9, that's a $1.80 contribution to AOV total, right? Because not everybody takes it. 1 out of 5 takes it. So you got to take this divided by 5. And then you got to take this divided by 5, so it's an 80-cent average order profit contribution. So now we start adding this, $17.50 plus 80. Then we have 2 upsells post-purchase. So you could see here, 50% margin again, 10% of people take each one. So it adds $1 to average order value, 50 cents to average order profit. Again here, $1.50. You add all this up, you got $38.80 average order value, awesome, with a $19.30 average order profit. When you divide this out, your profit, your acquisition profit is 49.74%, so just a little under 50%. And what brought it down was some of these things. This thing here wasn't quite 50%. So now let's apply some of the things I talked about. Let's add multiple quantities. Let's get an order bump that gets a little bit more take, and look what happens. So now the 1
is $35. The 2 quantity is 63. The 3 quantity is 91, right? And 65% of people will take this, 25% of people will take the 2, 10% of people will take the 3. This is a pretty common breakdown. So here you can see our average order contribution went from 35 to 47.60 because we have multiple quantities, which bumps up average order value. Now our average order profit goes down a little bit here, goes down to 46% overall, but the profit itself goes up, which is the main thing we're trying to do, because that gives us an extra of $4.26 to acquire a customer, which is a big deal. And then a little higher order bump with 100% margin on this item, so something like priority shipping or expedited shipping or priority processing or something, which costs us nothing, has 100% margin, or maybe this could be an info product for $4.99. We have $1.25, $1.25 because it's 100% margin. So you can see here, 46% overall, which is lower, but our profit is higher, again, which gives us more money to contribute to acquiring the customer. All right, compromising on conversion rate. So incremental gains equals exponential returns. Again, if you tattoo on one, hand, great marketing doesn't beat bad math, so you can look at that. Tattoo on the other hand, incremental gains equals exponential returns. That's probably one of the greatest life lessons I learned, and if I had one thing to pass on to future generations, if they sat me down and said, Brian, what do you want to tell the future? I would say, understand the law of compounding. Incremental gains, every day, little deposits compound into exponential returns over time. If you're frequent enough with the small deposits and give yourself a long enough runway, you can do anything. It's shockingly simple to become a multimillionaire when you're 65 or 60 or 55. You just have to start early enough and never stop investing little deposits every single day. It's not hard, but people don't do it because generally we don't have this. This isn't taught to us. Is this idea of compounding, getting really good at something. Everyone wants to have this cop out, and I'm going on a tangent here, but I promise you this is relevant. They kind of cop out by saying, "Oh, but they're so talented." Yeah, Mozart was really talented. He also started practicing when he was 2 years old, and practiced endlessly for a decade, right? So that's why, yeah, he was composing music at 8 and was a master by 12. But yeah, he spent a decade putting in his 10,000 hours plus. A great book on this is Mastery by Robert Greene. He wrote the 48 Laws of Power. If you want a simpler read, kind of an easier to digest read, there's a book by Jeff Olson called The Slight Edge. And the concept's the same. I mean, you just have to have these incremental gains, give yourself the runway, put in the hours, and you can have outsized returns in the long run. And same thing with every part of your business, but in particular, conversion rate. So I want to show you a little example here of what incremental gains over a 1-year period can do for your conversion rate and ultimately your revenue. So let's say you have a business. This is actually an illustration from a company. Actually, no, this is just an example. This is when I thought this was a company we would work with. But let's say you have a baseline revenue of $10,065, and your visitors, you've got 6,100 visitors, 3% conversion rate, $50 average order value, 10% returning customer rate. Let's just say that's your baseline. And if every month you just try to make that 1% better, so literally conversion rate's 3%, the next month we want to try to get a 3.03% conversion rate, and then a 3.0, whatever that ends up being. So after 12 months, you can see, because there's compounding. So even though it's 1% each month, it's 12.68% because there's a little bit of compounding. But these are multiplicative factors, right? If we have more visitors, converting higher, spending more money, returning more often, these all form what's called geometric growth. So by just focusing every month on bumping these up 1%, because they compound on each other, you end up getting a 44, almost 45% increase in revenue. By just increasing this by 1% every month, you get an almost 45% increase in revenue. And not to mention, because you have a business that's doing $5,000, almost $4,400, $4,500 more money per month, that dramatically impacts the valuation of your business. Because now that's an extra, $50,000 in revenue. 50 times a 4x multiple is $200,000. So you create an additional $200,000 in value for the business by just focusing on a 1% increase every single month on 4 factors. We call these the power levers in your business. And this is really the secret to how we scale businesses as fast as we do. How we go from literally 5 figures to 7 figures a month is just incrementally gaining. Sometimes though, you don't just get incremental gains, you get huge gains. But the only way you find those huge gains are by focusing on the incremental ones. All right, not optimizing your opt-ins. You got to think of your list building. It's a little bit different if you're selling like information. You're trying to build a list so you can sell a course or something. With e-commerce, list building, yeah, you can have lead magnets, and I think there's some things that work. We do a lot with quizzes and assessments and surveys and stuff. But your main source of list building is a byproduct of your paid traffic. So by not optimizing your opt-ins, by just having some pop-up or not even a pop-up or not even, have a thing at the bottom of your site that's like, join our newsletter. By not optimizing that, you're missing the biggest list building opportunity in your business. You have to optimize this. And we have a ton of strategies and tactics on how to do this, but the main thing is you got to focus on that. So, and then once you get the leads, make more with them by having your tripwire offers to convert and having your high ticket offers. Tripwire offers are low ticket offers, high ticket are high ticket. And these are all things to get more money out of that list that you've built, but don't neglect your opt-ins and always optimize. I mean, this is really the secret to why we get the results we get with our clients is we are always looking for those incremental gains and we don't let any opportunity slip. And we're always trying to beat our control, beat what we did last month, beat what we did yesterday. And those little gains in every part of the business all compound into something really big. Treating tracking like an option, especially now with iOS changes and everything, you have to use UTM parameters. We have something a little more advanced internally. We have some software that we built that helps us really have true attribution. Like we don't guess on what's converting. Like we know for a fact. We don't even look at Facebook's dashboard. We'll sometimes look at Google Analytics, which is better than Facebook. So if you use UTM parameters and you don't have our internal software, then use Google Analytics. That'll give you a pretty good idea of what's happening. But what we've built, it gives us perfect attribution. Like there's no way to miss it. It is true attribution of what ad is working, so we know exactly what to scale and what to turn off. And we optimize frequently, like sometimes every 24 hours, depending on our ad spend, but usually 48, 72 hours, we're always updating. But you have to use parameters. It's not an option anymore. It used to be one of those things where you knew you had to do it, but you didn't. This is no longer an option. All right, so now that we've covered that, let's roll all the way back and talk about tactics versus first principles. And remember, great marketing doesn't beat bad math. So let's take a look at an example here and look at some of the data. Don't get freaked out by all these numbers. I'm going to call out the most important ones and explain what's happening. So on the right side, let's look at this first. I already talked about this. We looked at the main offer. It was $35, 50% profit margin. Here's the contribution, $38.80 with an average order profit of $19.30, right? Here's a margin. Okay, we talked about all this. So now let's look at our advertising efforts. So we spent $1,000 in ads. We had 500 clicks, which means we had a 0.77% click-through rate. Here were CPMs. Our cost per click was $2. We had a 5% conversion rate. So we had 25 purchases on those 500 clicks with a $38.80 average order value. You can see that number right here, which means we had $970 in sales, right? So 25 times $38.80, $970. Our profit margin is $49.74. Remember, acquisition margin. That's why it's so important to know this. So our break-even ROAS was 2.01. Our profit was $482.48 because we have to subtract out, or we have to take the profit margin, and then we have to subtract out the ad spend, right? So our ROAS here was 0.97. So revenue over ad spend. So we had $970 in sales divided by $1,000 in ad spend. So that's going to be a little less than 1, which it is, 0.97. And our break-even was 2.01. So that is well below. Remember what I said. Your break-even is 2 in this case. We're at 0.97. So 0.97 is a bad ROAS. So when we look at this, we lost $517.52 because we made $482 in profit based on our 49% margin minus our ad spend. We lost $517. So the answer here, this is what will happen a lot of times. People look at your funnel or look at your store and be like, what do I do? I'm running ads. Should I just shut them off? I'm losing money. A lot of people won't even know they're losing money, by the way, because they won't know this break-even number. But let's say you did know that. You're like, oh, crap, I'm losing money. I lost $500. I spent $1,000. I lost $500 even after my profit from the product. So what's the answer? And some really well-meaning people will say, oh, you've got to increase the conversion rate, man. Like you got to, if you could just sell more, this will all work out. Or man, if you had a little bit higher profit margin, maybe you could maybe raise the price a little bit, and let's see. I'll tell you right now, that's not the problem. Okay, and before I click over, I'm gonna give you a chance to take a look. What do you think the problem is here? Anything stand out to you? All right. The problem is your click-through rate. That's the biggest problem. That is a horrible click-through rate. You absolutely can beat that. What we see on average is about 1.5%. So now let's look at the numbers with a few tweaks. We're not just going to try to get a higher conversion rate. Conversion rate's going to stay the same, but what we're going to do is we're going to implement some of the things that I showed you. So 1.54% click-through rate is way more reasonable, totally doable. What does that do? That brings our cost per click down. So now we have the same conversion rate on 50 purchases, but it's 50 purchases on a higher average order value because we implemented the multiple quantity. We implemented all the things that we talked. This is the same example I showed you before. So yeah, our overall acquisition margin went down, which means our break-even ROAS is no longer 2.01. It's 2.16. However, because of the higher click-through rate, because that was the bottleneck that was breaking the whole funnel, the whole marketing funnel. So once we got more traffic flowing through, converting at a higher average order value, our ROAS was 2.54, which was above 2.16. Bam, we were actually profitable on acquisition. We acquired 50 customers and made $178. How many times would you do this? How much money would you spend if you spend $1,000, you get 50 customers? If you're optimizing your opt-ins, you probably picked up 150 emails too that you added to your list in the process as a byproduct of selling this. And you put $178 profit after all expenses, ad spend, everything back in your pocket. How many times would you spend $1,000? Like as much as you can, right? As long as these numbers hold up at scale, you go hard. Well, this is what we do. This is the kind of stuff we do in eCom Legacy. We figure these numbers out. We figure out where to optimize all this stuff. And once we find that vein of gold, that signal in the noise, we hit it hard and we scale as fast as we can. Okay, now I'm going to give you one more sort of example / quiz because I think this is really good. Because again, what I'm trying to get you to see is not only get these ideas and kind of strategies and principles, but like how to interpret the numbers and know where to find the problem. So let's look at another example here. So going on that same chart, so you had this is actually a real world example as well. So 15,000 impressions, $570 in ad spend, 500 clicks. So really good click-through rate, right? 3.33. You see everything here, okay? 0.22 ROAS, 60% margin, 1.67 is break even. So when you look at all this, spent $570 and lost $495. Made 5 purchases, but lost $495. Conversion rate was 1%. So what is the advice here? Like, what would you say the advice would be? Most people, when they look at this, they're going to go, oh, the issue is a conversion rate. 1% is horrific, and I agree, it's horrible. If you could have just like 5% conversion rate, right? Like, then this whole thing would work. Will it? I'll do better than that. I'll give you 6% conversion rate. So we're going to hold all the same numbers, and instead of 5 purchases, you had 30 purchases. Your break-even ROAS is 1.67. This turns out to be 1.32. You're still losing money. Still lost $120. And I gave you 6% instead of 5% conversion rate. So what's the problem? And more importantly, what's the solution? So the biggest problem here isn't the conversion rate. It's this average order value. This is way too low for this cost per 1,000 impressions and this cost per click, okay? So let's look at this. 15,000 impressions, $570 in ad spend, same click-through rate, so didn't change CPMs, CPC, nothing. I need a higher conversion rate. 1% is horrible, but a higher conversion rate isn't the answer alone. So we don't quite need 6, we need 4.2, 21 purchases, right? But we still have to bump up that average order value. That's the problem. And we got to increase our margin a little bit on that funnel, on that marketing funnel. So then we get our break-even ROAS to 1.43 with a ROAS of 1.47. So in this scenario, we spent $570. We actually made $18 to acquire 21 customers. Again, probably picked up 60 emails along the way that didn't buy. And now we can market to these people and start profiting on the back end and get that full 70% without any ad cost on the back end. So hopefully this presentation helped clarify some things, give you some new ideas, show you what you need to be focusing on. And always remember, great marketing doesn't beat bad math. If your business is doing at least $5,000 a month in sales, then I would like you to consider applying for our eCom Legacy, and I want to invite you to apply. Again, it's a performance-based program, and all these principles we talk about, we apply in the program, and we help you scale your brand as fast as humanly possible. So if you'd like to check it out, you can send us an email. I'll put the link below. You can send us an email at support@ecomunderground.com, and we'll give you the details on what to do next. So again, always remember, great marketing doesn't beat bad math. Use these tactics, these strategies, these ideas that I've given you, and go sell more stuff. All right, I'll talk to you later.